The rain poured heavily that evening as Zina stood in front of the $30 million condo she had called home for the past 4 years. Her black dress was soaked from the funeral of her father, Chief Ekene, a powerful man, respected, feared, and deeply loved by his only daughter. Her eyes, still swollen from hours of crying, now widened in disbelief. Her husband, Fola, stood at the door, arms crossed, face cold. "You can't come in," he said flatly. Zina blinked. "What did you say?" "You heard me. This place belongs to me now. Your father is dead. You have nothing here." For a moment, the world stopped moving. The man she had loved, trusted and married, had just turned her away, at her most broken, right after burying her father. "But this is my home too," she whispered, trembling. Fola smirked. "Not anymore. Everything. This condo, the cars, the accounts. Your father left it all to me." He slammed the door in her face. Zina stood frozen in the rain. Her clothes clung to her skin, but the coldest thing she felt was the betrayal burning in her chest. She wanted to scream, cry, collapse, but she didn't. Not yet. That night, she checked into a cheap hotel on the edge of the city, alone, broken. She barely slept. The man who held her every night had thrown her out like she was nothing. But Zina wasn't weak. She was her father's daughter. The next morning, she went to her father's lawyer, Mr. Obilo, a discreet man who had handled Chief Akin's affairs for over 2 decades. "I need to know the truth," she said, her voice raw. "Did my father really leave everything to Fola?" Mr. Obilo gave a tight smile. "Not even close." He opened a drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope. "Your father anticipated this. He made a second will, the real one. Fola never saw it." Zina's hands shook as she opened the will. Her father had left everything to her, every single thing. The condo, the accounts, the shares. He had signed over his entire empire to her, his only child. Zina's tears flowed freely now, not from pain, but from gratitude. Her father had protected her even in death. With the documents in hand, she walked into the city courthouse. She filed a claim. Her lawyer moved quickly. Within days, a court order was issued, confirming her ownership and ordering Fola to vacate the property. When Zina returned to the condo a week later, it was quiet. Fola was standing outside, red-eyed and furious, holding a small bag of clothes. A security guard handed him the eviction notice. "You lied," he hissed. "No," Zina said calmly. "You did, and now you're paying the price." Fola tried to speak, to explain, to blame, but Zina turned away and walked into her condo, her home, her sanctuary, her father's final gift. That night, Zina stood on the balcony, sipping tea as the city lights sparkled below. She felt the wind in her hair and smiled, not with joy, but with peace. Her heart still ached, but her spirit was not broken. She had been locked out once, but never again. Nene had barely said her final goodbye to her father when her world started to crumble. After the funeral, with her heart heavy and her black dress still smelling of incense and tears, she returned to the $30 million condo she shared with her husband, Oba. Her heels clicked softly against the marble floors of the building as she reached the front door. But when she tried to unlock it, the key wouldn't turn. She frowned, tried again. Nothing. Confused, she rang the bell. Oba opened the door slowly, his expression cold and unfamiliar. "You can't come in," he said. Nene blinked. "What?" "You heard me. You don't live here anymore. This place is mine now." Her throat tightened. "Oba, what are you talking about? We live here together. This was my father's—" He cut her off. "Your father's gone now, and everything he left behind belongs to me." For a moment, Nene felt like the floor had been pulled out from under her. Her husband, the man who held her hand during her father's illness, had changed overnight. She looked into his eyes and saw no love, only greed. "I'm your wife," she whispered, her voice shaking. Oba shrugged. "And I'm the owner now. You can go cry somewhere else." And just like that, he slammed the door on her face. Nene stood there, stunned, not knowing what to do. Her bags were still in the car. She had no place to go, no one to turn to, at least not in that moment. So she drove to her cousin's house and cried herself to sleep, betrayed and broken. But the next morning, she remembered something, a late-night conversation with her father just 2 months before he died. He had mentioned something about a trust, about wanting to protect her. She hadn't paid much attention at the time, but now, those words came back like a flash of light in her darkness. Nene contacted her father's old friend and financial advisor, Mr. Aid. She explained everything, and within hours, Mr. Aid confirmed what she had barely dared to hope. Your father placed the condo and several of his assets into a secret trust, he said, and the sole beneficiary is you. Nene couldn't believe it. While Oba thought he was clever, scheming to take everything for himself, the man he underestimated the most, Chief Duro, Nene's father, had already protected his daughter from beyond the grave. With the trust documents in hand, Nene quietly filed a case through her lawyer. She didn't even tell Oba. She let him enjoy the illusion a little longer. When the court papers finally arrived, Oba's arrogance turned to panic. The court confirmed that the condo belonged to the trust, and the trust belonged to Nene. Even worse, Oba was found guilty of forging certain documents to falsely claim ownership. He was arrested for fraud and breach of trust. Nene never raised her voice, never fought back with anger. She let the law speak for her, and when she finally stepped back into her condo, it was with quiet pride, not just for winning, but for surviving. She had lost her father, but she had also found her strength. Chisholm never imagined that the worst pain of her life, losing her father, would be followed so quickly by an even deeper betrayal. After burying the man who raised her with unconditional love, she returned to the $30 million condo where she lived with her husband, Tunji. Her eyes were swollen from days of crying, her heart still raw from grief. All she wanted was to rest, to breathe, to sit on the balcony and remember her father's smile. But when she got to the front door and tried her key, it didn't work. She knocked, confused and exhausted. Tunji opened the door, but instead of welcoming her, his face was stone cold. "What are you doing here?" he asked. Chisholm blinked. "What do you mean? I live here. Not anymore. I've changed the locks. You need to leave." Her heart stopped for a second. "Tunji, what are you saying? This is my home. My father." "Your father is dead," he said sharply, "and everything he left belongs to me now." Tears welled up in Chisholm's eyes, not just from sadness, but from the sting of betrayal. The man she had cooked for, cared for, defended in front of her family, had thrown her out like a stranger. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She turned around and walked away quietly, hiding her tears until she reached the car. That night, sitting alone in a small hotel room, she opened a drawer in her suitcase. Inside, wrapped in brown paper, was a letter her father had handed her 2 weeks before he died. "Open this only if something bad ever happens," he had said softly. "And trust no one, not even the man you sleep next to." With trembling fingers, Chisholm opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter and a set of documents. The letter read, "My dearest Chisholm, if you're reading this, it means you're in pain, and I hate that. But I knew there was a chance Tunji might try to take what doesn't belong to him. The condo is in your name. The original documents are attached. Use them wisely. Protect what is yours. And remember, I always loved you the most. Dad." Chisholm burst into tears, clutching the letter to her chest. Her father had known. Somehow, he had seen through Tunji's charm, and he had made sure his daughter wouldn't be left with nothing. The next morning, Chisholm went straight to a lawyer. Her father's documents were airtight, clear proof that the condo legally belonged to her, but Tunji had already filed paperwork claiming ownership, and that made things complicated. Complicated, but not impossible. With her lawyer's help, Chisholm filed a fraud case. Investigations began, and it didn't take long to uncover Tunji's lies. Fake signatures, forged documents, manipulated records. It was all exposed. The court ruled in Chisholm's favor, declaring her the rightful owner of the condo and charging Tunji with attempted fraud. When she returned to the condo weeks later, Tunji was long gone, his name and reputation shattered. Chisholm stepped inside, clutching her father's letter like a shield. She looked around at the home her father had left her and whispered, "Thank you, Daddy." She had been betrayed, broken, and pushed out, but in the end, love and truth brought her back home. Amara had just buried her mother, the only family she had left in the world. Her heart was shattered, her mind numb, and her eyes still swollen from days of mourning. After the funeral, she returned to the luxury condo she shared with her husband, Jide. She thought she'd find comfort there, maybe some peace, but as she stepped toward the door, suitcase in hand, she was met with the shock of her life. The doorman stopped her. "Madam, I'm sorry. Mr. Jide gave instructions. You're not allowed in." Amara stared at him confused. "What?" "I'm really sorry, Ma. He said you've been removed from the list. "You're no longer authorized to enter the building." She thought it was a mistake. She called Jide. He didn't even pretend to be gentle. "You can stay in a hotel, Amara. I've decided to take full ownership of everything. You never contributed to the condo. It's mine now." Her lips trembled, but she said nothing, not a word. She ended the call and walked away with quiet dignity, though her heart screamed. She didn't cry that night, not because it didn't hurt, but because her tears had dried up after losing her mother. Now, only silence remained. For 3 days, Amara didn't respond. She ignored messages, calls from mutual friends, and whispers of gossip already spreading like wildfire. Everyone thought she had lost everything. Everyone thought Jide had won. But on the 4th day, the world changed. News outlets across the city received a media invitation to a surprise press conference at a 5-star hotel. Cameras flashed as Amara walked in wearing a black suit, composed and calm. She took the podium with quiet grace, then dropped a truth bomb that shook the room. "My name is Amara," she began, her voice steady. "3 years ago, my mother and I invested in several properties across Lagos, including the condo located at Echo Atlantic Towers. Unknown to many, 70% of that condo belongs to me, shares held in my name, verified by legal documentation and banking record." Gasps filled the room. "I have remained silent for days," she continued, "not because I was weak, but because I was gathering the truth. I filed my claim in court. The man currently occupying my property, my husband, did so under false pretenses. The law will take its course." She stepped away from the podium, handed the documents to the press, and walked out. Within hours, the video went viral. By morning, Jide's business partners began pulling out. Investors panicked. Clients withdrew contracts. The man who once humiliated Amara in private was now humiliated in public. Within a week, his company was under investigation. His reputation was ruined. And the condo returned to its rightful owner. Amara didn't say another word. She moved back into her home quietly, planted fresh flowers on the balcony, and watched the sunset with a calm heart. She didn't fight with fists. She fought with facts. And what Jide didn't know destroyed him. Isioma stood at the gates of her father's mansion-sized condo, her hands trembling and her eyes still swollen from crying. Just 2 days earlier, she had buried her father, Chief Uzochi, a man who had built an empire from nothing and raised her like a queen. Her heart was broken, but she believed at least she had her home and her husband, Dio, to lean on. She was wrong. As she reached the front door, dragging her suitcase behind her, Dio stepped outside, arms crossed and eyes cold. "You can't come in," he said bluntly. "What?" she asked, stunned. "This is my father's house." "Was your father's house," he snapped. "And now it's mine. I'm the son-in-law. Your father trusted me more than you. I've already filed for full control of the estate. You have no rights here." Isioma felt like the ground under her feet had collapsed. "You're kicking me out? Just like that?" "You should have been smarter," Dio said. "You didn't secure anything. You just assumed." And with that, he shut the door on her face. Isioma spent that night at a friend's house, crying quietly in the guest room. Her world had turned upside down. Her husband had betrayed her, and her father was no longer alive to protect her. But deep down, something didn't feel right. Her father was too wise to leave everything in the hands of someone like Dio. He had always warned her to be careful, always told her, never trust too easily, even in love. The next morning, she remembered something strange. A week before his death, her father had told her about a special place where important things were hidden. "If anything ever happens to me," he had said, "go to St. Matthew's Church, ask for Father Okoro, tell him it's about the red box." With new hope, Isioma traveled to the small church on the outskirts of the city. Father Okoro recognized her immediately and without a word, led her to a dusty storage room. From a hidden shelf, he pulled out a small red metal box. Inside was a sealed envelope, her father's real will. She opened it with shaking hands. The will made everything clear. Her father had left the entire condo and other key properties solely to Isioma. Dio's name was not even mentioned. The betrayal now burned hotter, but so did her determination. Within 48 hours, she hired a lawyer and filed a legal case. The forged documents Dio had submitted fell apart under pressure. The real will, verified by the church and her father's lawyer, overruled everything. Weeks later, Isioma stood once again in front of the condo, but this time as the rightful owner. Security escorted Dio out, carrying only a suitcase. "Where will I go?" he pleaded. "I don't care," Isioma said quietly. "You took everything from me when I was grieving. Now you can feel what that's like." The door shut behind her. Peace settled on her shoulders like a warm shawl. Her father may have died, but his love, his protection and his wisdom had saved her in the end. Adanma never thought the man she married would one day throw her out like she was nothing. After her father passed away, she returned to the luxury condo where she had lived with her husband, Lekan, hoping to find comfort after the painful funeral. Instead, she found betrayal waiting at the door. As she reached the condo entrance, tired and grieving, Lekan stood there with his arms folded and a smirk on his face. "You can't stay here anymore," he said coldly. Adanma blinked. "What do you mean? This is my father's house, our house." "No," he replied. "Your father is gone. I'm in charge now. You have no legal claim. Leave." She was stunned. "Lekan, I'm your wife. Not anymore." He cut her off. "You can sleep wherever you want, just not here." The door slammed shut, and with it, so did everything Adanma believed about love and loyalty. For 3 nights, she slept in her car, parked on the quiet side of the city where no one would see her. She didn't call anyone. She didn't ask for help. Her pride and pain were too heavy. On the second night, curled in the back seat with only her jacket for warmth, she remembered something, an old conversation with her father. He once told her, "If anything happens, go to Zenith Bank. Ask for manager Ayula. He knows what to do." The next morning, still wearing the same clothes, she went to the bank. Manager Ayula greeted her with kind eyes. "I've been expecting you," he said gently. He led her to a private office and pulled out a file. Her father had created a hidden savings account in her name years ago. It had millions sitting untouched. "Your father said you might need this one day," Ayula explained. "He trusted only you." Adanma couldn't hold back her tears. After everything, her father had still found a way to protect her. With those funds, she didn't just get a lawyer, she went straight to the real estate agency handling the condo. The property had technically been in her father's name, but because there was no formal will, Lekan had tried to claim it. But now, with the account in her name and her father's old financial records, she made a bold move. She bought the condo, not reclaimed it, bought it outright. Lekan never saw it coming. One morning, a legal team arrived at the condo and handed him an official notice. "You are no longer the owner. Vacate within 48 hours. He panicked, called her, begged, swore it was a mistake. Adanma didn't answer. She waited until he was gone. Then, with a quiet strength she never knew she had, she walked through the front door of her home, this time as the legal rightful owner. She lit a candle for her father that night and sat on the balcony, staring at the stars. She had slept in her car. Now she owned the whole building, and the man who left her with nothing was the one who ended up with less. Eboob had just buried her father, Chief Madu, a man larger than life, a man who raised her to be strong, but also kind. Her eyes were still swollen from crying when she returned to the mansion her father had built, hoping to find some peace. Instead, her husband, Kola, greeted her at the gate with the kind of coldness that cuts deeper than a knife. "You don't live here anymore," he said sharply. Eboob blinked in confusion. "What are you talking about?" "I've taken over everything. Your father left no clear will. This property belongs to me now. You can take your bags and go." She stood frozen, unable to understand what was happening. This was the man who held her during her darkest nights, the man who promised to protect her, now treating her like a stranger. "But this is my home," she said softly. "Not anymore," Kola replied, turning away without remorse. Eboob didn't scream. She didn't argue. She simply walked away, silent but shattered. That night, she stayed in a hotel, trying to understand how her life had flipped in just one day. The betrayal felt worse than her father's death. It wasn't just about losing a home. It was about losing the person she thought loved her. But what Kola didn't know was that Chief Madu never trusted easily, especially not with his only daughter. A few months before his death, Chief Madu had installed hidden security cameras in his home, not for safety, but because he suspected Kola might try something after he was gone. The cameras were discreet, invisible to the eye, and directly connected to a private hard drive stored in a locked study cabinet. The next morning, Eboob remembered this. She returned to the house, not to fight, but to retrieve one thing, her father's old laptop, which was kept in a hidden compartment she had once seen him open. She didn't even need to go inside the house. A loyal staff member who had served Chief Madu for over 20 years secretly passed it to her. When Eboob opened the files, her hands shook. There it was, clear footage of Kola in her father's study, days before the funeral, forging documents, faking signatures, and bragging to someone on a call. Once I get these papers in place, everything will be mine. She'll never see it coming. Her heart broke all over again. But this time, it wasn't just pain, it was fire. With the footage and her father's original property files, she went straight to her lawyer. A legal storm followed. Court hearings, public exposure, media coverage. It all came crashing down on Kola. The forged documents were proven fake. The video evidence was undeniable. The judge ruled in Eboob's favor. Everything Kola had tried to steal, property, assets, power, was stripped from him. He was charged with fraud and faced jail time. The same man who had played her heart like a game was now at the mercy of the law. And as she walked back into her father's house, her head held high, Eboob whispered with a tearful smile, "You may have played me, Kola, but my father played you first." Omalicha stood quietly at the door, heart heavy and confused. She had just returned from her father's burial, her hands still smelling of the red earth she had thrown over his grave. All she wanted was rest, peace, and a safe space to grieve. But when she tried to enter the luxury condo she shared with her husband, Somto, she found the locks had been changed. She called him, expecting it to be a mistake. "Somto," she said gently, "I'm outside. The key isn't working." His reply came without emotion. "That's because you don't live there anymore." Omalicha blinked. "What?" "I've taken over everything," he said coldly. "You've always lived off your father's wealth. He's gone now. It's time for me to take control. Find somewhere else to go." She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She simply turned off the phone, walked back to her car, and sat there in silence. The next few days were hard. She slept in her car, washed up in gas station bathrooms, and kept her pain to herself. People tried calling, asking if the rumors were true. She didn't answer. She let everyone think she was broken. But deep inside, Omalicha was planning. Somto had made one terrible mistake. He thought silence meant weakness. But Omalicha wasn't weak. She was her father's daughter, and her father had taught her well. A week later, she went to her father's lawyer. There, she uncovered the truth about her ownership rights. Her name was on every major asset. Her father had transferred 60% of his company shares to her before his death. The condo, registered under her initials. Somto had never paid a single dime. He had simply married into wealth and assumed he owned it. Omalicha didn't confront him. She let the law do the talking. Within weeks, court documents were filed. Somto was served eviction papers. His fraudulent attempt to take over her father's estate was exposed. The media picked it up. Stories of a greedy husband throwing out his grieving wife went viral. People who once admired him now mocked him. But Omalicha didn't stop there. Using her shares, she called an emergency board meeting at Somto's company, the one he had built before their marriage. What no one knew was that he had made her a 40% silent partner, trusting her blindly because of love. And now, she used that very trust to remove him as CEO. When he arrived at work one morning, security didn't let him in. "You've been voted out," they said. The board no longer. After the funeral, Ngozi returned home hoping for silence, for space to grieve, to sit in the condo her father had left behind and remember his laughter. But instead of peace, she was greeted by arrogance and betrayal. Her husband, Chuka, was waiting for her, not with open arms, but with a twisted smile and a suitcase by the door. "This place is mine now," he said, without hesitation. Ngozi frowned. "What are you talking about?" Chuka leaned against the wall, arms crossed like a man already celebrating his victory. "Your father is gone, and since you didn't leave behind any official paperwork, I'm taking control of everything. You can go stay with your mother's people or something." Ngozi stood still, too shocked to even react. The $30 million condo had been in her family for years. Her father had bought it in cash, decorated every corner with love, and always told her, "This will be yours one day, not for anyone else." And yet, here was her own husband, throwing her out like she was nothing. She didn't argue. She didn't cry in front of him. She packed a small bag, walked away with quiet dignity, and checked into a small hotel on the edge of town. For a few days, she didn't eat much, didn't speak to anyone. The pain of losing her father was already too much. This betrayal was unbearable. But then, like a light in a tunnel. She remembered something. Years ago, her father had asked her to sign a few documents, strange legal papers that mentioned a company registered outside the country. She hadn't fully understood them back then, but he'd said, "One day, this will protect you. Just keep the originals safe." She had kept them, sealed in an envelope hidden in her closet. Now, she opened them again, and what she found changed everything. Her father had created an offshore company in her name, registered under international law, completely independent of Nigerian legal control, and the condo, the entire property, was listed as an asset under that company. In other words, the condo legally belonged to Ngozi alone, not her family, not her husband, just her. With the help of a trusted lawyer, Ngozi filed the documents with the proper authority. A legal notice was drafted and served to Chuka within days. The message was clear. You are illegally occupying company property. Vacate the premises or face charges. Chuka's world flipped overnight. He tried to fight, tried to fake more documents, tried to deny everything, but the evidence was undeniable, airtight, and international. Ngozi returned home, escorted by the court bailiff. Chuka had no choice but to leave. No court would support his lies. No fake charm could save him now. The man who thought he had inherited millions had in truth inherited nothing. Ngozi stood in the living room that night, silent and strong. Her father was gone, but his wisdom had shielded her even after death. The $30 million condo, it was never Chuka's. It had always been hers.